Hola, ¿qué tal?
Aquí tiene el control de las
Bueno, yo no voy a
diapositivas.
presentar.
¿No va a presentar?
No, pero los que van a presentar les dejamos acá.
We kindly request all the attendees to take your seats. And now, the panel that is called Digital Transformation in the Public Sector. And the moderator will be Bianca Berchan-Paladines, expert in financial management of the Inter-American Development Bank. Okay, please take your coffee and take your seats, please. And we invite you to take your seats in order to start. Great. Now we will be starting the session. Good morning, dear members of FOCAL and colleagues of the World Bank, of the Inter-American Development Bank, IPSAS board, IFAC, and all the international experts that are here with us. It's a great pleasure to be with you after so much time of looking to each other through screen. And now receiving the hugs is great. Of course, I'm very, very happy to meet you physically once again. I want to convey my greetings to Mr. Juan Torres and his excellent team that have made an extraordinary job to make this event possible. Today, I am honored to be the moderator of this panel of digital transformation in the public sector, and we kindly request you that all the questions be posted in Slido. You have the code in your tables, scan it, and please, of course, since we were in Brazil, we love that. And since then, we use Slido and we haven't stopped. So go to Slido and post your question there. I will be receiving them and I will be sharing them to this wonderful panel that we have today. I will start and I will introduce Mr. Anthony Cintron Roman. He comes from Microsoft. He is the Architecture Data Microsoft Director of Artificial Intelligence, Good for Life. He works with scientific data experts and investigators in artificial intelligence and projects based on data science. He is an expert on cloud solutions and open data, and he has an MBA with information financial management systems. And he came exclusively to participate today with us. And so thank you, Anthony, for your effort. And in the same way, we have Mr. Santiago Schneider. He is fiduciary leader expert in the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, and he has a bachelor's degree from Columbia University, and also he is an advisor in the financial management sector in the BID. He is in charge of the fiduciary operations in the bank in the 26 Latin American and Caribbean countries. He has many years of experience working in Latin America banks, having positions as for example, the financial advisor in Washington, in Colombia. He is a senior specialist in BID in Ecuador and fiduciary coordinator in Brazil. And also we have today Thomas Müller-Marqués Berger. He is an auditor, partner and global leader of accounting for public sector of Ernst & Young, with more than 26 years in PSASB practices. And also, during 10 years, up to December of 2020, he was the chairman of this group of public sector of accountancy Europe, known as European Accountants Association. And now he is a member of the Eurostat for the European Accounting Standards of the Public Sector, PSASB. And since January, he is a member of the Technical Board of the World Bank. He is a member of the European Accounting Standards and Germany Accountants Association. And also he was an expert of ISA's board and in the European Court of Auditors. He has many books on the public sector and he has adapted international conferences positions. And also we have the attendance of Alba Rodríguez. He is a lawyer in Paradox. She has more than 15 years of experience of stock exchange markets and financial expert in fintech. And she has a focus on gender, and she developed the framework to authorize the stock exchange market and the second stock exchange market largest in Mexico in order to approve some findings to expert. And now she is the legal attorney in Paradox that works in blockchain and fintech, and she has a postgrad from UNAM. And she has a fintech law degree and also stock exchange market contracts expert since 2009. And she has a PhD in public accountancy laws for the public transformation sector and is a diploma from Monterrey. And she also participates in the Women's World Bank program. And she has studies in the leadership and diversity in world banking in the University of Oxford, and she has a regulator certificate in the Accounting International Association, and she has a PhD in Harvard. And so please post your questions in Slido. Thank you very much, Bianca. I feel very honored of being here and visiting Mexico City for the first time. As Bianca said, I work for Microsoft in a team that is called Artificial Intelligence for Well-being. It's a philanthropic team. I am not an accountant, but I will give you some perspectives on regards to the public policy and to the social well-being. And the topic that I will be presenting today is open data. Maybe many of us have read articles such as the ones that you will be watching on the screen: artificial intelligence, open data, and how they can impact the global economy, how they can help the development of private industries and governments. There is no doubt that many of these topics, in part, are sensational, and on other sides, they are very much true. In fact, the progress made in these areas provide opportunities to develop new innovations and also to progress in many sectors and industries. And more, the reason that we will talk about this is that data and machine learning are part of the daily activities of many people, among so many interactions of people in social media apps and many other apps that we use in our mobile phones, smartphones, and purchases online. All these aspects have in their middle some data and some machine learning aspects. At the same time, it uses and generates a great amount of data. These data nowadays are closed just in private companies and governments. These data can foster new innovations and progresses and create new business models. But one of the problems that we face in this area is the access and exchange of data both in the government sector and in the private sector's companies. It is true that the movement of open data in many organizations has been increasing more and more throughout the time. But we have not reached that time in which we can see the exchange among many governments and private companies. As you can see, the benefit of government open data can be the organization exchange of data among companies and the CILO network in Latin America, that is an association of real estate that was created on government open data, taking into account interest rates and private data to create a platform that was creating some friction because this platform tried to sell and buy properties. Therefore, that platform provides new models in the way in which this sector is working. and is fostering these areas, and how this sector it has been growing more and more quickly. Open data in governments. Well, it has increased, as I mentioned, in the last decades. And there are many governments and countries, as you can see in the map that I have put on the screen. All of them have created websites providing information about their own countries and provide data of different government services. A great example of how all these made an impact, for example, in the London government, was that the Public Transportation Agency opened their data to be open data, and that allowed them to create an app that is quite famous, that is City Map. And it transformed the way in which people were using the public transportation in England. And they reported that it was needed to report an annual additional budget of 145 million. And also the private companies have a great impact when they open their data to the public. In this case, for example, in Microsoft, we are working, and in April, we started to open many data sets on health and sustainability and for many other social well-being sectors. Because besides being transparent in the government information systems, we can foster innovation in social well-being sectors and help to open more data so that more people can use them differently in creating innovative solutions to help the society in general. An example of all this recently was that in Microsoft we opened a visualizing dashboard to represent digital equity. And this is represented in the United States only. But digital inequality has created a great impact in society and on economy. When we talk to the internet high-speed access in order to have more impact on education and be able to develop technical skills, all of these can be visualized on our app, in our platform, using only government data. All the data using this dashboard were data that the American government opened, combined with the data of private companies. Therefore, we can have an overall visualizing framework, and we can see areas that are needing additional public policies to close this digital gap. More recently, and during the pandemic of COVID-19, the way in which many countries implemented the growth analysis of the pandemic and the eradication of the pandemic was thanks to the open data of many organizations in the health sector. Lastly, we can see the value of open data based on figures and see the economic value of monetary value in the global economy. Well, this is a graph that represents the estimate analysis of an organization that is called McKinsey. It evaluates different sectors. And if these sectors adopt open data strategies, they can help others to have a higher growth in global economy. At the same time, when we talk about open data, that doesn't mean that we all need to have the open data No. Open data means to open data in a responsible manner. And logically, in many sectors, they are very resilient for their privacy and also the confidentiality and security of their data. But even though there are options to face the privacy problems in such a way, data that are closed in the government or in private companies can be open to use new innovations that can benefit the society in general. They can be open data if it is done responsibly, and there are many ways. Among them, we have the differential privacy method that was developed in Microsoft. It's an area that continues to evolve. But now we have open source solutions accessible to private companies and to government agencies. In summary, the differential privacy app includes many mathematics in conducting the activities. To be brief, basically, this technology introduces statistic noise to cover the original data, but in spite of that, provides the same type of insights or signals of data in such a way that you can develop solutions that can get the same solutions or results that can be sufficiently similar if you compare it with the original data. Other options include synthetic data generation. This synthetic data generation started mainly in computer vision and on images. But now we have applications that are used in finance evaluation, as for example, time series. This is the app that is called Time Series GAN. The concept is similar to what we get in the differential privacy. Their objective is to generate data that can help to get the same solutions or get the same insights that if you were working with original data. It only requires that you are trained on the automatic data to generate the synthetic data generation. And last, I want to tell you that when we talk about open data, we need to think that it is not only a question of having open data coming from government agencies and companies, because maybe that cannot provide us such more high value as we think. But those datasets can be combined with other private companies' data and combined from other countries' data and generate new innovations that now we cannot visualize. But by using those data, we can generate it. So the point of open data, the main objective is to get the perspective of another country or countries or persons or private companies to foster solutions for the well-being in society and for the economy. Thank you. Good morning once again. Since many years ago, we have been talking about digital transformation. This digital transformation comes from the need of adapting ourselves to the change, to the new diversity of our products and services, and to the constant fostering of leaving behind many obsolete data and that don't have additional value. We were talking about technology. In the past, that only prevailed to the IT technicians. But now we talk about technology, study technology, apply technology, promote technology, and we feel with the great responsibility of being permanently looking for a change and adapting our ways of work to the needs of our customers. We need to do it. Here in this graph you can see the following. The basic technology of internet and how it has grown in the last 3 years. In average, 268 million users every year. And this is due to virtuality that attracted the users in COVID-19 pandemic and in order to have a more agile, efficient, and large scope activities in the society. The pandemic of COVID-19 accelerated the implementation of technologies in our daily activities, and putting aside the doubt that we had about the digital transformation benefits, and we contribute to cover efficiently some of the government challenges, as for example, fight against corruption and optimizing the public budget, and potentializing the value generation of knowledge by processing high volume of information. And here accounting plays an important role because by implementing international standards and best practices, we get high quality information that allows to take best decisions and allows also to be more transparent and allows to do the public reforms that we need. Based on these factors, we identify them as success factors in the implementation of sustainable IFSS. And in the bank, we have the CIAB guideline for the digital sustainability in the public transparency financial information. For the bank, the IDB puts innovation and knowledge in the middle of the work to accelerate development. Through innovation, we have the opportunity to support the efforts of all the nations in fostering the development factor and will reach more beneficiaries and facilitate new solutions. And these put us in test to implement innovative focuses to adapt to the national needs and overcome the development challenges. The strategy of the bank does not only ratify the strategical innovation IDB strategies, that is to promote society equality and the integration of different Latin American regions, but also promote gender diversity, the union of genders, institutional capacity, and the state of law. But most important, we identified that in order to accelerate the progress, all these strategic promotions, the IDB needed to reinforce the work in everything related to technology and innovation. The road to digital transformation is like the Tour of France. Maybe you can be a fan of riding bicycle, but that demands a lot of training, patience, and constancy, and also to have a teamwork. The vision of the bank is to transform digitally all the processes, both in operational processes and in the internal corporate processes, trying to deliver best results to our customers. We are doing it mainly by 3 action lines: delivering excellence to the customers, by delivering results and improving experience on the service to our customers, with an integral technological focus data and knowledge through all the project cycle of our operations. In second place, what we are doing is to establish critical digital documents, have expedite and agile technological documents and adapted to the users to facilitate the fluid results delivery to our customers, and having savings and efficiencies in internal corporate processes, including the elimination of redundancies and optimizing the use and assets data that are more and more important, and creating a digital culture, an efficient culture that is efficient, oriented to results, that allow all the employees to innovate, collaborate, and connect efforts in all the initiatives. The IDB, through the strategy of strengthening and use of national sources, has played an important role in the digital transformation in the fiduciary and public financial instruments. The promotion of use of technology is one of our priorities because we recognize the digital transformation and implementation of disruptive technology as key elements to modernize and be more efficient in the public sector. Throughout more than 10 years, the bank has accompanied the regional countries in the digital transformation processes by supporting them in the technical and financial sectors that has allowed us to know the current situation of the fiduciary systems of the nations and identify opportunities to be more modern. Through the innovation, technology, and digitalization, we have done that. We have conducted studies, some to know the status of technological implementation in systems of external control, purchases system, EGP agencies, and many open data studies. We have supported the implementation of many activities by promoting good practices and international standards to facilitate the knowledge transfer by the cooperation South-South in themes as, for example, electronic payments, framework agreement implementation, EGP framework implementation, and by giving conferences and workshops. Many techniques have been shared in conferences and have discussed the last tendencies in the digital transformation and promoting the progress in different government of nations. And we have included the disruptive technological implementations, as for example, blockchains and digital knowledge, and data tools that have allowed us to identify behavioral patterns in the participation of vendors, for example. The bank will continue to strengthen its position as the strategic partner of the region and using processes and digital tools and innovating solutions to strengthen the institutional capacity and accompanying the countries in their digital transformation of different national systems.
Experts confirm that the best way to find some sort of assessment amidst the whole process of digital transformation is testing all the internal transformations. At the BID, we're working in that process. And from the headquarters or the Department of Procurement and Management, we're internally developing the implementation of different technologies that foster mainly efficiencies in all the services that we offer to customers. Amongst these, we can mention Luca. And some of you must have heard about Luca, right? Luca is artificial intelligence created to review the financial reports. Now, Luca cuts down the time that it requires us to audit the financial reports at the information. It cuts back 90% of the time. And we even have here one of the creators of this technology. The bank has also created different technologies that enable us to cooperate and generate knowledge amidst us and our 26 economies. There's a lot of lessons learned as part of the process. Some of these can be shared. We have to change culture, and that's very important as technology itself. It's important to start doing this with solid steps in the scalability of the process. We must not develop just technology. We must develop solutions. there's not a custom-made or a solution that's ready to use. We have to improve the concepts, and if there's failures, we have to improve and surpass the failure and be cost efficient. There's long, mid-term objectives. We have to work with key performance indicators and baselines in efficiency and quality. It's part of the process. It's a careful process that will lead us to be focused. What have we achieved? Today we have 60% of the steps of the fiduciary digitalized process. It's 60% of them are digital. We have 20 digital initiatives or projects that are being developed for the fiduciary cycle of the bank. So digitalization has enabled us to be efficient with our processes, capturing data sets. A lot of data has been compiled. After being compiled, they're analyzed to benefit the clients with our results. We have constituted a team that's engaged, with clear objectives, and we're working to digitalize all the processes. Our initiatives are developed in-house with a cooperation of the 26 economies. In the process of digital transformation, we include one of the initiatives that's of greater scope that's being developed by our bank currently. It's a project of connectivity with a customer. That initiative is a response that will satisfy a need. We have to integrate our projects and manage them properly in the digital field of things, which facilitates sharing information amongst executing parties and the bank as a stakeholder. You know, sharing between parties happens throughout the whole cycle of the project. So we know that amidst change, the road will lead us to face challenges. First, we need to have everybody on board in the institution. We need multi-sector cooperation and stakeholders cooperation. As business allies or development allies, we're responsible for fostering and developing initiatives that lead us to the digital transformation in a regional scope. We need to first identify the needs of our customers. We need to study how we can improve our products and services. Using technology as a tool, and all of this has to be accompanied by a strong cultural strategic change. And we must always remember that digital transformation means that we should all be engaged, we should all be on board as part of our institutions. Thank you so much. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Estoy encantado y agradecido. Estoy encantado. I'm very happy and very glad that I've been invited to be part of the FOCAL family, especially because we have this family physically. I was asked to talk about digital transformation and blockchain for public finance. Blockchain was already mentioned in your presentation, and I have to say I'm not a technologist. I'm an accountant and auditor by profession, and I'm looking at how many accountants, auditors, and the public can benefit from technology. So let us look at what's the starting point, what's the current problem description, and many speakers in the introductory session already talked about the need for government officials to make this efficient, and they have to defend themselves and be efficient to expand on transparent basis and be accountable when they exercise budget. In a scenario that's live, it's important to compile data. Not only must we have that data, we must have it timely, so there's a response from our public. If we see the slide, the majority of government agencies are here, and they store the data in silos, and they depend on those tools that do not facilitate tracking this information live. You see how it's divided. You see the budgeting of public finances and how it's spent, the impact of it also. Obviously, the impact It leads us to analyze the efficiency in budget exercise, in federal budget efficiencies, and the gaps. Which are the challenges that governments face? What's the root cause? In the cases you'll see at the right of your screen, we could say that we have the opportunity to generate financial reports. For example, we must report the results timely and distribute them appropriately. That's extremely important. And now if we speak about the non-financial reports, but the reports of fiduciaries, we have to be efficient. And also some public agencies don't have a vision of integration of data. And we have a gap of financial information. And amidst the context, we see both sides and how we allocate budget or distribute budget and contrast that with the budget and income. Third, for accountants, there's difficulties when trying to conciliate data, and sometimes we don't have the full capacity to integrate it all and to have it during a process of conciliation in a year or now. I mean, the results give us, for example, clarity regarding the budget use, the operations, the transactions, the delays, the amounts. Since I'm an auditor, I need data integration to track, to continue monitoring, to continue analyzing the expenditure. If we don't have that, we don't have the support. So with blockchain, we find a solution in just a few words. What is blockchain? Well, blockchain, at top level, at the highest levels, blockchain is a layer. It's the stratigraphy. It's unique. Blockchain contains multiple stakeholders, and it's an ecosystemic process. In other words, blockchain has its stages, its layers of distribution that enables all the parties involved. All the parties can see the operations, transactions, digital data, and predefined events. The data keeps it stored in blocks, in chains. They're connected with a chain. That's why it's called blockchain. Now, the data that's contained in the blocks are not manipulated. They cannot be changed. Everyone has the same data. They cannot be changed, as I've told you. At the lower section of your slide, there's interaction between the operation side of things, the funds, the stakeholders as in administrators, intermediaries, mediation, legal covenants between stakeholders, counterparts, and then there's the segment of beneficiaries. They all have their database. There's an interface, so there's that connection in the layers, which are the solution that underlie. It's like a blockchain or custody of all the accounting entries. Number one, what happens in blockchain operations? There's no cash. The cash or that principal is in the token block. It's the currency used when there's custody of accounting entries in blockchain. It's very important. And the second element or aspect that will be explained by the rest of my panel members, my colleagues, are intelligent contracts. Intelligent contracts have specific terms and conditions between parties that signed off the contract, or subjects that are also correlated to blockchain of those accounting entries. You see the operations of the transactions and how they have an effect. For example, you can analyze the payments of an invoice. An amount is automatically processed when that amount and when we confirm the deliverable. If the receiving party of the payment confirms that the amount or service has been provided, there's an accounting entry automatically seen in the payment with the efficiency of blockchain. Now let's see the following slide. It's a thorough slide. With it, I can explain the flow of operations. At the top side of the screen, you can visualize the flow of blockchain and custody. As an example, the ministry has its indicators. So there's a budget of 120, or out of those 120 that are budgeted, 100 are seen in an entry thanks to a program to a third party that will budget a program for our youth. You see how there's budget allocated to education committees? There's 60 and then there's 40 in the community or education programs. They can transfer that money to third parties and allocate that budget to the final party that receives the resource and apply the budget for morning government education programs. The source of the budget can measure the ins and outs of that cash. We can see how many kids were part of the program, who were benefited by the morning or night education program. That gives us improvements in our youth's conditions or crime index of our youth. You see, there's other indicators, and many situations correlate to blockchain. At the foot of the slide, you can observe that the Ministry of Education allocates 120 million to be exercised. That money is transferred into digital tokens. With digital tokens, you can know with blockchain, how did they exercise the budget? So there's accounting entry in that blockchain. So there's an interface in blockchain between the Ministry of Education and the other stakeholders that are part of that pie graph that we've analyzed along with the rest of the solutions in that block. The same thing happens with an ABC education program. There's contracts, there's payments, there's entries, and payments to allies that develop the education programs. Those details are analyzed in the terms and conditions or contractual stipulations in correlation to the conditions that I've previously explained. The Education Committee can compile data and of how that budget was exercised. So there's an accounting entry in that blockchain. It's stored in that specific layer of blockchain. You can see at the foot of the slide, obviously, that based on the data that's transmitted live, the Ministry of Education can see in back office what was processed, receiving information timely and reliable to adjust education programs of government. And if the exercise of the budget and are not giving the expected results along with the stakeholders, and they're not giving expected results, the budget was exercised to generate those outputs. We're going to speak about the benefits, and succinctly, I'll speak about blockchain. There's first transparency. Every stakeholder in the chain of custody of the process can see the same entries, and the solution of the accounting entries leads us to be transparent, precision. It's not It's not something that you can manipulate. You can have your financial reports and any other entry or the general ledger for financial purposes. So we can create many other reports. That's why we're going to speak about the efforts of correlating this to sustainability. Efficiency leads us to optimizing our efficiencies, improved capacity, and the right management of all the processes with the steps when you exercise budget. Think about the stakeholders. When the debt, whoever has the debt and should receive, can conciliate the data. As an auditor, third party, I can trust the system. I don't have to analyze 100 samples of the operations or transactions between these parties to give certainty about what happened. Last comment, but not least important, the data compiled is not manipulated. There's a reliable source of data. The data cannot be manipulated, as I've said, when somebody exercises budget. That's why internal and external auditors can execute their job correctly and analyze how the budget was exercised. That's why we can speak about the thorough facts of our efforts. So we have the PFM as a support. We see the accounting entries of the budget that was exercised, the allocation of it, and I share this case study as a matter of example, which is relevant. It's a real example of a project that's material in Australia now. Here, in this case, as reference, we're involving the authorities of the public sector. They wanted to increase productivity, achieve transparency, use reliable information for the exercise of budget, to capitalize and develop infrastructure for the education ministry. We see in this case the challenges of operation. We wanted to have an automatic process, being transparent and bundling the information of all the services with unitary numbers. We see what happened between departments involved who exercise public or private budget for the program. We constituted a team that analyzed the manual processes that were repeated. There was consultation. We analyzed what happened between stakeholders that compiled data amongst entities to control the exercise through the authorities. We had then a major workload in the finance ministry or department. The general ledger was cross-referenced or cross-checked. Without reference, we couldn't visualize the operations or the transactions, and the financial reports or the accounts were object of our study. In this case, the customer asked us to pre-approve specific concepts of expenditure to track and properly monitor the exercise of that budget throughout the whole process. We had to use engineering and have steps of the process happen automatically. The solution also enabled us to study all the stakeholders involved in the custody of this operation or transactions. People were involved even outside of our department. We analyzed the benefits to the customer. We had 100% of coverage of the financial operations in real time. We saw what happened with the operations or transactions. There were some cutoffs. We didn't have to hire auditors or third parties that are authorized. Number two, definitely here there was a decline in the payments calendar. There was a cut from 30 days to 5 days. Minutes, we didn't have to hire a third party for the payments. That was all object of assessment by the agency and other entities. This led us to cut down on expenditures. We had all our invoicing and analyze the invoices in this practical case. We narrowed down times in the deliverable of customers or vendors. We worked with the authorities to achieve what was material. We worked fast, deciding upon matters fast with unbundled data, reliable data that could be seen. We saw the budget, the payments, and the efficiency of our work. After having said this, I thank you for your full attention. I'm ready for your questions and answers so we can continue our debate. Good afternoon to you all. I have a difficult mission. I'm here to talk to you about blockchain, and I have to explain 2 disclaimers. First of all, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not into technology either. So it's likely, and I'm sure that we will find common grounds of understanding. When I was part of the National Commission, Banking Commission, we wrote the entries or the criterion with which financial institutions have their general ledger or accounting. I think I have a good relationship with accountants in their profession, so that's why I tell you these are the results. Now, you might ask yourselves, what is blockchain? Tom has already explained with detail how it functions. I want to share or explain an analogy that is not sourced from my inspiration. The analogy or case is something that I learned in a training of the World Bank, and there's a board game called Monopoly, in which the objective is to be rich. And you get rich by buying real estate and obtaining a payment through leasing now of the property. Now, in this board game, when we were kids, if you played a Monopoly ever, that contract of purchase would imply that there was an intermediary, a bank. We gave them a deed of the real estate. We got that deed on our side of the board, and it gave us property or ownership of the deed. But what happens if you lived in Mexico and it's September and the earthquake alarm started and it was triggered, and you had to leave, or the person from the financial institution has to run down or leave the building, or somebody has receives more or less money or was given another property or real estate deed. We could not be able to go back to the whole story of the entries of that operation in the Monopoly as a board game. We have to think who did what. Think about the case as an analogy in your minds. You see, blockchain gives us certain benefits or advantages. Let's say that right now the earthquake alarm is triggered and we all have to leave the building. We must all know then who did what and who had to do what in the monopolic board game in the virtual field of things. Three reasons. The entry is going to be decentralized. We're no longer going to need a bank that's centralized. It's called bank. That ledger, leads us to know who has who and when, who sold what to who, with a specific date and the specific amount. That information is not manipulated. It cannot be changed. We are going to have certainty about the operation happened in a specific time, and it cannot be manipulated. Now, how does blockchain correlate to accounting? It's a tool of entries, of records. And blockchain is an advantage. We can have real-time information and operations being monitored. Now, this has been explained by previous panel members. They've explained this with examples. I will explain the following. Now, accounting and blockchain, in accounting, we can see the entries and how there's a transference of property or rights, and it's completely registered in that blockchain. If it's a public domain, we can all have access to those entries. We don't need to have certainty about a certified report or account balance report or public faith or a notary to know that transference actually took place. Now, how does blockchain correlate to the public sector? Thomas gave us a specific example about a program of education in Australia, and that leads us to our analogy in the Monopoly board game example. To have certainty, to know that deed or that property was mine, there was a third party involved for me to have certainty. And I'm sure that some of us have suffered or having to go through paperwork. If you have to go through a window to deal with getting your visa, your passport, your identification, and when you go to a teller window, they ask you for your ID. There's requirements in different government agencies, and the requirements are repeated in many agencies. They ask you, give me a copy of your ID, your taxpayer ID, copy if you're a moral entity, an individual entity, are you a representative of an entity? Are you the counsel or attorney? There's many memes. There's memes even, like when you go to process something before government agencies, some people think that you're going to be baptized or they ask you for so much. So think about having all of those identifications in a package. So you don't need to have a financial institution, in this case, in the Monopoly board game analogy. We don't have to identify ourselves with all the government agencies, but in blockchain, we can upload all our digital information and identifiers. Now that would enable. Think about how enabling it is, how much potential this has. When you have to go through paperwork, get something done, that would innovate. If we could obtain services and products faster, and if everything's that well aligned. Think about the impact of our cities. Let's not just think about what happens in a city. Think about people who are refugees, stateless people, find it very difficult to identify themselves. They can't, and the authorities have a difficult time trying to make sure that person is the person she claims to be. Maybe the person left the ID in a country they had to flee from. We're not just talking about saving time, and when trying to have a digital identification, it makes it feasible for the authorities to identify a person that is going through a case that's complex. When you have to identify a person, you have to find the best vehicle to do so. Here I bring to you some cases, some practical cases. The first one's this one, digital identification. Now, you might know what happens in your jurisdictions, but in Mexico, what's been a problem is identity theft. That happens when a citizen or a person goes to a financial institution and asks for a line of credit on behalf of another person, and who is using the resources another party, not the identified party, and who's left with a case of high complexity is a person whose identity was stolen. So what happens with financial institutions is that the bank executive is not an examiner. If a subject, a person, comes with an identification that says that she is a person, he's not an examiner in identification. So what could happen with digital identification transactions in blockchain. That could give us certainty because we can have identifiers in blockchain in the world of technology. We can have that accreditation as a subject. And by having this data uploaded, we don't need an examiner in the financial institution at the teller's window, right? We can have access to blockchain. So when we access blockchain, we can have certainty about the fact that Alba with this ID is Alba, Jose with the ID is Jose, and nobody's stealing somebody's identification. Or with this example, I insist, this works for financial institutions, but what happens when we're dealing with cases of people who are refugees, that are stateless people that left all their identities or identifications in their countries of origin? There's programs or departments or agencies like NOR that have digitalized identities of our population or citizenship, and that's part of the objectives. We want refugees to have IDs in different countries. Which potential advantages do we have? Personal records, health records, or let's imagine that we have a medical file, the electronic file uploaded in the blockchain. Now, our doctors, physicians need to see our reports when we're getting older, right? Maybe a physician or a doctor should have access to that digital file and get to know data that we don't even know. I remember that when my daughters went to school and they asked us for their clinical file, they asked me, and when did she started walking? When did she start crawling? And I have 2 daughters, and I'm a short memory mom. But that was a problem when I was questioned. Think of when I get asked questions when I'm 60 or 70, and somebody asks me about a surgery or what happened a long time ago. That information should live in an electronic clinical file. And I see your faces, you're surprised. One case was the identity case. This case, we're talking about the personal data of our health. So we could have access, or whoever has consent to access those clinical files should have it. The challenge is cumbersome. At this table, we're talking about cases of identity theft. And if somebody wrongfully used your medical record, that could also have a consequence, even worse consequences. If we compare cases of like identity theft or the clinical file, like records or property deeds is another case of records. With a legal exercise, with a Roman doctrine, we know that if we have a title or deed of real estate, we go to the public department of registry of deeds to see who's owner of a specific real estate. But what happens when that record has archived many thousands of papers? The archives are not sorted out. Maybe you have ejido deeds in the archives, and it's difficult to define clearly property of the specific territory or deeds. And there's no way for us to find the legal owner of an asset, nor obtain credit if you don't have a deed that shows that you are the owner of a real estate. There's projects in Ghana. There's a project in Ghana that tries to develop a link between the financial institution that has like the records of deeds of Ghana with a specific agency in that country. In Ghana, the territory and the ownership through a deed was difficult to specify. So with unmanned technology, with drones, the authorities fly over to define the limits of the person's territory and keeping track and record of that property and upload it to blockchain. So what does this help us to do? For welfare distribution, we use blockchain. There's great advantages. In one record, we have decentralized data. The precise word is decentralized. Everyone should have certainty about the fact that government welfare distribution is being sent to the proper beneficiary in less time with less cost. It sounds like paradise, right? But now, the public sector is not the only sector that could be benefited by blockchain. So the private sector, the financial sectors has been working constantly in this specific theme. I can tell you that it has not been a linear transition, and all the stakeholders thought that blockchain was fun. On the contrary, the first reaction of different stakeholders was fear. Many didn't know what it was for and what it served us, how it served us. I mean, we had to go through the resistance phase of things. People rejected blockchain. Now there's hubs of innovation in different financial institutions, in international agencies, and international banks in which they're discussing blockchain and other subjects. Cryptocurrency is object of debate. Intelligent contracts are object of debate. NFTs, the potential use of blockchain in value markets, compensation, and other fields. The main use of blockchain is cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, for example. With the blockchain, we create a currency that could be traded as a means of payment that could be efficient for many. I mean, you can pay off many services with it. And there's many advantages. I want to give you an example of stateless people or refugees. When there's a transaction of remittances, when somebody's working abroad and sends money to their country of origin, they get collected a high fee because there's an intermediary, which is the financial institution. The remittances are sent directly from a wallet from abroad, the person that's working in a different economy, and it's transferred to my wallet without having to use a third party or financial institution. That gives us an advantage, and we save the payment of fees. With crypto assets and blockchain, I mean, we have seen it all evolved in the financial field. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain had a potential use. So if crypto assets are in blockchain and everybody knows who's the legal owner of what's contained in the blockchain, you see the impact of this in credit. We speak about getting a loan or line of credit from a financial institution, right? Now imagine yourselves. Let's think that a bank gives you or allocates you a loan to finally get a vehicle. If you don't pay a specific installment, the vehicle is recovered, or it's recovered. First, they have to find the car, execute the sentence with the car to obtain or collect money back to pay off the debt. What happens if that debt was supported by cryptocurrency? Well, the bank might have the keys of the vehicle and to execute with a guarantee if the stakeholder that's in debt hasn't honored the payment and enters into default. It's important for us to say that financial institutions, international institutions, have to mitigate the risk. That's on their side, because these operations have advantages but also have an implicit high risk because of volatility of crypto assets. And if I used a crypto asset to guarantee a payment, tomorrow that guarantee can decline.
So the recommendations by the bank are, first, please be careful, financial regulators, because if you allow financial agencies to operate with cryptocurrencies, you need a specific regulation. Second, please consider the capital rates, because it's not the same to have a cash flow than a cryptocurrency credit. So there are many international agencies that work on this. On one side, they take advantage of these technologies, but on the other hand, they also try to mitigate the risk they imply. By using the capital growth. One of the main challenges in Latin America is how do we finance the small and medium enterprises? And the great issuers that allocate values in the stock exchange market, are put aside of this. I'm focusing on the stores that the owners are the women, and they do not have the title deeds at 100% regulated, and then they have difficulties to have more finance. Well, the blockchain allows them the possibility to issue ISTOs or MPOs and with a token that allows them to receive a value of certain property or certain cash flow, very similar to a stock exchange market, but without intermediaries, stock houses, or with more specific products that allow them to grow more capital. And here, you will not allow me to lie. The panelists are representatives of the IDB, and they play an important role in the technological innovation. And they have issued in Colombia a blockchain bonus. Through this technology, both the regulator in Colombia and the financial regulator in Colombia and the IDB follow the issuance of this bonus that is a traditional bonus but mounted on the technology blockchain. Sometimes when we talk about blockchain, it can sound like if we are talking of Australia or a remote country. No, this is something that is happening in Colombia, and is an example of whatever that can happen in a very close jurisdiction. So what do we need to incorporate this blockchain in our DNA? Well, I want to emphasize, besides all the technology, two things. First, training. And that's why it is very important to gather today and to exchange experiences. To first understand what is blockchain, because sometimes we think that it will be a magic wand to solve all our problems. No, maybe that is not the case for all of us. It will not apply for all of us, and not all of us can be benefited. No, it must be a very specific case that can use that and that can get a benefit. And second, create communities. And here I put some examples. For example, LACchain in Mexico, a hackathon where the winner proposed a public bid model through blockchain, or the British Blockchain Association where they have national chapters. And well, this event, the focal event, is an example. And in that event, we have the confidence and closeness to ask, well, how are you managing this problem, this phenomenon? Are you understanding the blockchain? How are you executing the blockchain? Well, the second part goes to the testing. Part of these communities have the objective of testing, because it is not as easy as that you upload the blockchain and that's all. No, we need to have the project and test them. If we talk about Mexico, the fintech law, that is the law that regulates the financial technical companies, incorporated the sandbox, the regulatory sandbox, or the novelty models that allows the financial technicians the innovation of this technology. And some that has been requested has the blockchain chapter. In the law, well, that sounds very beautiful to test it in a controlled environment. But in Mexico, we have not approved any environment. So this says that we will have to face many challenges in the public sector and in those private sector for all those that want to innovate the blockchain. And if we create a community, we need to create the necessary capacities to go in common from one place to the natural implementation of projects and to include the blockchain. Alma, we are just coming to the end of the presentation. I will just ask you to wrap up. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I love that in our forum we have received a lot of questions. But before going on, I want to cordially welcome our luxury panelists of today. Mr. Juan Pablo de Botton Falcon, since January, is the Undersecretary of the Department of Expenditure in the Ministry of Treasury. And before, he was the National Manager of NAFIN and also Director General of Bancamex, where he developed the Digital and Sustainable Development Bank tool, besides promoting the financial cooperation through services. And he was also the Technological Planning Manager in the Tributary Administration, and also promoted institutional plans and the implementation of electronic payment in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also the support to the taxpayers. And he was also a member of the political board of the President Andrés López Obrador while he was taking the administration. In the first year of his career, he was an advisor in the Ministry of Public Credit, and he was the vice president of Associated Financial Manager in Bancomex, where he used the measurement of revenues in the corporate bank. He knows data science and big data, and also conducts analyses in the private companies and public sectors, and designed the path to trained analysts of information and some management tools for statistics, and also gave training to staff of the Ministry of Public Credit and Treasury. And also he is a bachelor's degree and he was graduated in CIDE, and also had exchange studies from the California University. Thank you very much for the introduction. I am very happy to be here, and I want to thank all the panelists today. In fact, always in this type of events, forums, my great fear has always been to talk about technology as something that excludes, something that cannot be understood by everybody and that cannot be shared and discussed by everybody. I think that, in fact, there are new concepts, and there is a kind of frustration that because you do not understand everything. But if you learn, well, this is not a rocket science. It is not so much complicated. I think that everybody can understand it, and that is important because that is part of the current negotiations of how to best use this technology. So, with all the previous presentations of my colleagues, I feel very confident, and I hope that I can share to all of you something that can trigger your curiosity. Well, you have learned about my introduction, and I am under Deputy Secretary of the Expenditures Department of the Ministry of Treasury. And of course, I have experience in programming. I am not longer a programmer, but I want to talk also of some concepts and ideas that have been explained here, and that I want them for you to receive them and trigger your curiosity and experience, because my previous colleagues have explained this matter very well. And I have the experience of having the revenue and expenditure financing management in the tributary system. And Juan has helped us by organizing this event. And Janet, also, thank you very, very much, because you have organized an excellent event. And without knowing you, because we are on the first day of this panel and we will get to know more, but my experience with panels is that you meet a lot of knowledgeable people. And sometimes we say that we waste our knowledge because all the experience of experts is excellent. They can explain you perfectly well how you interpreted certain source data in a wrong manner, and they explain who complied or who didn't comply with the quality standards and the data management. And there are some other characteristics because besides being responsible and systematic, they elude risks. You do not expect to have negative surprises in data management. You always check, you have your control data, and for example, these kind of experts have the opportunity to see results, and that is wonderful because on the quality of that information, you can take your best decisions and also control all your accounts, and you can compare things and try to unify your vision of a whole government through an accounting language. And so I think they are doing a good job. In this sense, for example, they elude the risk of having accounting risks. Sometimes, for example, an accountant is not related to technology, and that's wrong because great technology users not necessarily are technicians, they are accountants. For example, it's important that all of you know some of the concepts that are in place today, and that you use technology and that you can share your knowledge about technology and how it has been useful for you to develop your activities. So I would like to mention some things. And some things that are difficult to change habits or to have a digital transformation is culture, the culture of the organization. Many times we need to issue the license to people that is outside IT department, and we issue a certificate for them to participate in developments and give opinions. I think that the worst disaster will be to order the technological department to do something, and then you will be questioning every 3 months how are they doing, and they answer 20, 30, or if they reach 99%, they show it to you and you say, no, that is terrible. The things are terrible. Who check it? And they say, no, you didn't give me a written report. And that's terrible because it has implied a lot of cost and a lot of time invested. And also, all your plans are delayed. So I think that everything needs to have your work and all their work, and to put your business knowledge together with their expertise in technical aspects. And everything you do will impact the organization as a whole. And if you do wrong something, it will impact negatively. And at the same time, having a broad accounting management, well, that implies a lot of work. You need to be automated. And if you automate certain systems, if it is not well designed, then you will have problems. Did you watch fantasy film? And there is a chapter where Mickey Mouse is having 2 water buckets, and he pours them into a well, and it begins to fill up. And as it is automated, there is no supervisor, then it overflows. You need to realize that you need to automate processes to potentialize the work of the accountant, not to substitute the accountant. In what sense? Well, I think that all people going into data and checking the accounting systems, as soon as they check, they get some knowledge. And that is a process that if you reconcile monthly something, well, you will see, for example, if you're an accountant, that a data is wrong and something is wrong. So sometimes the very automated systems skip this. And so you need to look for control variables, because technology, in my philosophical point of view, does not substitute human beings, but potentialize him to eradicate repetitive activities and give better insights to improve the work of the human being. So there are a lot of concepts that I would love to talk to you. And of course, it's complicated because I have been assigned brief time. But for example, if you understand that big data areas are not only data science, in big data you have the computer systematization. And in data, you have a fine difference between the muscle and big data. That is the brain of the big data. And that is the difference in the different areas of IT. Another part is digital transformation and digital opportunity. I think that's very important not only for government but for the civil society. By concepts, and I will explain some concepts, we need to understand that that begins on a trust. There is a matrix, a regulation, where you establish that the other person is Bianca. Somebody told me that she is Bianca, and I remember her name, that she is Bianca. I don't have her biometrical data, but on the type of relationship that I have with her, I will define if the ID or passport will be issued quickly. So maybe I will not need to talk with her. I will have some data based on trust and the digital identity that can be based on the normal knowledge that I have on a certain concept. I will give you one example, a simple example that sometimes we have in our daily life. For example, when you talk through WhatsApp or through a message app with somebody else, you assume that that person is the person that you assume he is or she is, but that is not necessarily true. So if you are going to transact with something that is not dangerous, if you do it in a certain frequency, well, that verifies that it is. But you will not verify the identity of the other person. But if you are going to purchase a house or do a bank transfer, please be sure of the identity of the other person or the other counterpart. And that is part of the process on how to establish the confidence enough for the transactions. And I want to tell you something else. In this digital transition, the worst that can happen is to do it alone. Because IT people need accountants, and accountants need IT people. And also the best solutions are made by a team. We had an experience in the tributary administration system in Mexico. We have a taxing system based on electronic billing, and we receive 1 terabyte data per day. That is like 30,000 bills per second. And so when you look for historical data for an audit, you will receive 1 peta of information of history. And this is very expensive to run, and it is not good to make mistakes. We work with Microsoft and with another company that is called Databricks in Silicon Valley that has an app that is called Spark, and it has a new platform. That platform allows to reduce cost and have an accelerated processing of data. That allows to pre-fill not only the physical tax declarations of people, but of also companies. And we did it in 8 months, and it was a reasonable time framework. And we reduced 17 times more the cost by running it at 17 times more the speed. And so 70% of the tributary administration system bills are pre-filled automatically. And that is a trusted confidential information because people are confident that we are filling it up according to the data reserve. And so this is a technological example that are closely related to what I'm talking about. This is, for example, commerce electronic trade, and it has a collection system. When I arrived, the system was 1,000 delay because the IT people received a project, and then when they deliver it, it was wrong, and so they were delayed. So I took a big room in the tributary administration system. I asked for 1 or 2 IT technicians of each bank, and we enclosed them for 8 months with a certain vigilance. And it was very useful because we were able to understand which were the problems they were facing in their systems and be able to reduce the amount of meetings to see status, percentages that were not needed. So, of course, I'm not telling you to apply the same tactic. For us, it was important, and more or less the interest of the banks for not reporting directly to the Treasury was around 3 billion or 4 billion pesos. That will be around $200 million. So that facilitated the operations, and you could pay something, and very quickly you could cross customs in the logistics side. And another aspect that we implemented during the pandemic was that in the case of tributary administration, for example, transactions that you do using the identity that is given by the tributary administration, well, is delicate because that allows to make a clear payment of your taxes. And if you want to ask if you have paid completely your taxes and to use your taxpayer ID, well, by us, we didn't have the fingerprints or the eye ID. We used the SAT ID. And in the first 8 months, it had more than 1 million users. And what we did was very creative, and we had a multidisciplinary table force, because we said, how do we do? In order for another person take my password and be credited as if he were I. So physically, people were asking a file, took your fingerprints, and to check your identity. But that couldn't be done because if many people was gathered during the pandemic, that was contagious and it was dangerous, and people couldn't stop paying the taxes. So what we created was that people could upload scanning of the IDs, and we will check it with another one. But we said, well, anybody can take your photo from social media and be credited as you. So we said, let's put a random phrase and let them ask to record a 10 seconds video. And so it will be difficult to record something by saying all the possible amount of phrases. What do I refer? A photograph is taken easily, but a video and saying all the possible randomized phrases was complicated, and it was verified by a person to see if everything was correct, and then it will be approved as positive. But at the same time, we confirm that we will fall into many realities. Many people save 3 hours time of traveling from their place to the tributary office. And so also they will have to face the video and not to make another person record the phrases that we were asking in a video. And so all these adjustments are based on how to do something and find a solution. And so that was what we created from the pandemic. And one of the most important things in our countries is to see that people can count with internet connectivity, because that covers the gap of inequality for those people that cannot pay for it. We are reinvesting $1 billion for 500,000 to put connectivity towers, because right now this is basic infrastructure for basic human right, and it is relevant to act in that sector. And I can go on talking about this. In my home, they are really bored because I only talk about technological matters. But my point is to tell you that I am an economist, I'm not an IT person, but everything is accessible. I taught myself how to program, and I also trained other banks when they bought infrastructure and big data infrastructures. And so when people tries to get knowledge, when that person needs to read a lot of regulations and accounting rules, in the beginning, that person thinks it's impossible. But everything is possible. If you have the will and the curiosity, you can use a lot of resources to learn. There are very good videos that are teaching blockchains to a child of 5 years old, and then 1 to 12 years old, and 1 to a student of university. So I will continue to talk about this for hours. I will stop now. I thank you for your attendance. I hope that you have learned something and that you can enjoy the forum and many parts of our country. Thank you. And thank you very much, Juan Pablo. And thank you very much to all the panelists. And as we are used to adapt to changes, as you can realize, we have very brief time. We are very happy of all the interest from your side. Your questions are wonderful, and we will try them to answer them during the coffee break, because we do not have enough time. And so we want to start the following session. But there are some conclusions. The COVID pandemic has fostered digitalization of the public financial system, and there is no doubt. And this demands modernization and adaptability from all of us. And we, as the public financial system, are interested in self-educating ourselves in many topics and facilitate these processes to all the team members, and how generate this culture inside our institutions, because the digital transformation process without a cultural change will not be possible. It is important to remember that technologies are needed to be more efficient and being more competitive in the digitalized world. However, technology is not the end. It's just the means that allow us to be more agile and efficient in our profession. Thank you all, and let's continue with the next panel.